There was a deal made. Not in those words, not across a table with documents and signatures and a clear articulation of the terms on both sides. Not in any form that either party would have described as a negotiation at the time, because it did not feel like a negotiation. It felt like a life being built, a set of choices being made, one at a time, across the early years of a marriage, about how the shared structure of that life was going to be organized, who was going to do what each person was going to bring to the enterprise and what each person was going to receive from it, what the shape of the life was going to be, and who was going to maintain that shape from the inside, while the other maintained it from the outside. The deal was made in the ordinary language of early marriage, in conversations about whether she would continue working after the children arrived, in the gradual shift of domestic and administrative responsibility toward one partner as the other's professional obligations expanded, in the unspoken but mutually understood accommodation of his career advancement at the cost of her career development. In the social arrangements, the household organization, the child-rearing distribution, the financial management structure that accumulated across years into something that both of them lived inside without ever sitting down and explicitly agreeing to, the deal was real. It organized 20 to 5 years of a shared life. It produced outcomes for both of them that were the direct result of its terms, and it was never written down, never explicitly negotiated, never subjected to the kind of clear articulation that would have made its terms visible enough to be examined, questioned, revised, or understood by both parties with the precision that the stakes actually warranted, and now it is being unwound in a legal proceeding by people who were not present when the deal was made and who are operating from a framework that sees the assets and the debts and the income differential and the years of the marriage and produces a number that is supposed to represent what is equitable given the structure of what was built. A number that arrives in a document and is presented as the settlement of a deal that was never explicit enough to be settled cleanly. If you are a man over 50 sitting inside that proceeding, or sitting on the other side of it trying to understand what happened, there is something about the deal you made that nobody ever explained to you clearly, not when you made it, not during the years you were living inside it, and in most cases not during the proceeding that unwound it. Today I am going to explain it. I am Mr. Daniel. I have spent years working directly alongside men navigating the financial and psychological aftermath of long marriages and the settlements that ended them. This is the relationship spectrum. And what I am about to give you in the next 20 to 5 minutes is not a grievance platform. It is not a validation exercise. It is a forensic breakdown of the economic architecture of your marriage, why the legal system valued it the way it did, and what a man who finally understands that architecture can do with the clarity it produces. Here is the exact problem this video solves. The men I work with consistently arrive at the same point of confusion. They provided, they built, they sacrificed. They held up their side of the deal across decades. And then a settlement arrived that asked them to keep paying after the deal had already ended, and they could not understand it, not at the level of genuine understanding, only at the level of reluctant legal compliance. And that gap between compliance and understanding is where the grievance lives. It is where the bitterness compounds. It is where men spend years carrying a weight they were never given the tools to put down. The tool is a specific economic concept. It is called the household production problem. It sits at the intersection of family economics and divorce law, and it is almost never discussed with the precision the subject demands. By the time this video is finished, you will have that concept with enough structural clarity that it permanently changes how you read both the deal you made and the settlement that unwound it. You will understand what it measures, why the legal system built its framework around it, and why the number that felt arbitrary was, in most cases, attempting to do something structurally real, even when it failed to do it equitably. That is the destination. Now let me take you into the structure of the deal itself, because the deal had a logic that most men living inside it could not see from the inside, and seeing that logic clearly is the load-bearing foundation of everything that follows. The deal had two sides. The terms on each side were real, were significant, and were almost completely invisible to the person on the other side of it, while the deal was running. His side was the visible side. He provided financially. He built the career. He generated the income that funded the shared life. He absorbed the professional risk, the career stress, the commute, the workplace politics, the years of grinding towards something that produced the financial security the household ran on. He sacrificed time with his children for the income that supported them. He deferred personal interests and personal development in the service of professional advancement that benefited the entire household. He organized a significant portion of his adult life, his energy, his attention, his identity, around the production of financial resources that the family consumed. That side of the deal had a number. It was visible, it was legible, it was valued in the market in the form of his salary, his retirement contributions, his business equity, his career trajectory. The economic value of his side of the deal could be read off a pay stub. It was the kind of value the legal system was built to see and measure and divide. Her side of the deal was the side that was almost entirely invisible as an economic quantity while it was running. She managed the household. She raised the children. She handled the administrative complexity of a shared life in all of its dimensions. She was present for the children during the hours he was not, which in a household organized around his career advancement were most of the hours. She managed the social infrastructure of the family. She maintained the relationships with extended family, the school involvement, the medical appointments, the emotional labor of a household that was functioning and that required constant and largely unacknowledged work to keep functioning. She did all of this while simultaneously absorbing the career cost of the arrangement, the professional development that did not happen because she was not available to pursue it, the career trajectory that did not develop because the primary parenting responsibility fell to her, the earning capacity that atrophied across the years of the marriage because the time and energy that would have developed it were directed at the domestic side of the deal. Instead, her side of the deal produced economic value that was never assigned a number. It subsidized his career advancement by handling everything that would otherwise have required his time and attention. It produced human beings who were cared for and raised in ways that would have cost an enormous amount to purchase in the market. And it produced a career cost to her that compounded across the years of the marriage and that would take years to recover from on the other side of the divorce. If recovery was possible at all, at the point in her career and her life where the divorce arrived, this is the structural asymmetry at the heart of the deal. The terms on his side were visible and market-legible. The terms on her side were invisible and market-illegible. And a settlement that is trying to produce an equitable outcome for a deal with those characteristics is doing something genuinely difficult. It is trying to assign a number to something that was never numbered while it was being produced. That is the household production problem. Household production refers to the economic value created by unpaid domestic labor, childcare, and household management within a marriage. This value is real. Economists who study it have developed methods for estimating it, typically by calculating the market cost of purchasing the equivalent services. The replacement cost of what a full-time parent and household manager provides to a household, valued at prevailing market rates for childcare, household management, administrative services, and emotional labor, is consistently substantial. Estimates vary depending on the specific household, but they are consistently in a range that makes household production one of the largest components of the economic value of a long marriage. Not a peripheral contribution, a central one. The legal framework of equitable distribution was designed, in part, to account for this value. The recognition that a spouse who sacrificed career development in the service of household production deserves a share of the marital estate that reflects that contribution is embedded in the logic of equitable distribution. This is the principle that explains why a man whose wife did not work outside the home for 20 years nevertheless owes her a substantial share of the assets he accumulated. The law is, in that sense, attempting to value what she produced that could not be read off a pay stub. But here is where the framework becomes more precise, and this is the distinction that most men inside settlements have never had explained to them with adequate clarity. The legal framework values the household production contribution at the moment of divorce. What it does not fully account for is the ongoing career cost that the contribution created, the reduction in her earning capacity that will persist for years after the marriage ends, the retirement savings she did not accumulate during the years she was doing household work instead of paid work, the professional network she did not build, the skills she did not develop, the career trajectory that did not materialize. These are not costs that ended at the divorce. These are costs that will continue to shape her financial position for years, sometimes decades, after the settlement is signed. That ongoing cost is what alimony is designed to address, in addition to the immediate asset division, and this is where the deal becomes most contentious and most confusing for the men on the other side of the settlement. Because the man who made the deal looks at the alimony obligation and sees a demand to keep paying for something that has already ended. He has already provided the financial foundation across the years of the marriage. He has already funded the lifestyle and the children's development and the household that ran on his income. The settlement divided the accumulated assets. The alimony obligation asks him to continue providing income to support a standard of living that the marriage created and that the divorce ended for both of them. His experience of that obligation as unjust is understandable. It is also, in a specific and important sense, incomplete. What the alimony obligation is trying to account for, however imperfectly, is the career cost that is still running. His side of the deal ended at the divorce. Her side of the deal is still producing costs that will follow her for years. The ongoing financial consequence she is still absorbing, in the form of reduced earning capacity, reduced retirement savings, reduced career development, is the direct result of the contribution she made to the household while the deal was running. The alimony obligation is the legal system's attempt, however crude and however imperfect, to bridge that asymmetry. This does not mean every alimony award is fair. This does not mean the specific terms of any particular settlement are necessarily equitable. It means that the principle underlying the obligation has a genuine structural logic that most men have never had explained to them clearly enough to engage with honestly rather than reactively. A man who understands that logic is a man who can engage with his settlement in a fundamentally different way than a man who does not. He can assess whether the specific terms of his settlement reflect a reasonable accounting of the actual economic asymmetry of the deal, or whether they reflect something different, an overcorrection, a miscalculation, a legal framework applied without adequate sensitivity to the specific circumstances of his specific marriage. He can make that assessment with the precision of a man who understands what the settlement is trying to do, rather than the reactive incomprehension of a man who has never been told. There is a man I worked with who had been married for 26 years. He was angry about his settlement in the specific way that men are angry when they have never had the economic logic of the deal explained to them. He felt that he had provided generously across the entire marriage and was being asked to continue providing after it ended. He could not understand, at a level that felt like genuine understanding rather than reluctant legal compliance, why the settlement was asking what it was asking. I took him through the household production framework. I showed him what his wife's contribution to the household had actually been worth as an economic quantity. I showed him what her career cost had been across the years of the marriage, the income she had not earned, the retirement she had not saved, the professional development that had not occurred. I showed him what the ongoing career cost of the arrangement was likely to be in the years ahead, and I asked him, when he had all of that information in front of him, whether the settlement number still felt as arbitrary and as unjust as it had felt before. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I have thought about many times since. He said, "I knew she worked hard. I just never thought of it as something with a number attached to it." That is the deal, both sides of it, and both sides have a number attached to them. The settlement is the legal system's attempt to account for both numbers at once. It does not always do it well. It does not always produce outcomes that are genuinely equitable, but it is doing something real. And the man who finally understands what it is doing is a man who can engage with his situation from a position of clarity rather than a position of reactive grievance. Now let me give you the practical framework for navigating the deal and its unwinding. I call it the Deal Clarity Framework. It is organized around 3 specific applications of the economic understanding this video has been building toward. Each one is executable. Each one produces a different and specific outcome depending on where you are in the process. The first application is the accurate assessment of your specific deal, not the generic deal I described. Your specific deal. What were the actual terms on each side in your marriage? What did you provide, and at what personal cost? What did she provide and at what personal cost? What was the career cost she absorbed by organizing the marriage around your professional advancement? What was the compounding ongoing career cost that will persist after the marriage ends? This assessment, done honestly and with the discipline to account for both sides rather than only yours, is the foundation of an accurate understanding of what a genuinely equitable settlement in your specific case would actually look like. It may diverge significantly from the standard formula. It may align closely with it. What matters is that it is grounded in the actual terms of the actual deal, rather than in a generic legal framework applied without sensitivity to your specific circumstances. The second application is the use of the household production framework as a negotiation instrument. Understanding what your wife's household contribution was worth as an economic quantity, and being able to present that understanding clearly and honestly inside settlement negotiations fundamentally changes the character of those negotiations. It moves them from an adversarial dispute about entitlement to a genuine accounting of what both sides contributed and what a fair settlement of those contributions actually looks like. Not every negotiating environment will be receptive to this approach. But in cases where both parties are capable of engaging with the economic logic of the deal rather than simply fighting over the formula's output, the household production framework creates the conditions for a settlement that both parties can genuinely understand and accept rather than simply comply with under legal compulsion. The third application is the post-settlement understanding that produces genuine acceptance rather than persistent grievance. A man who carries his settlement as an ongoing injustice, who never understood what the settlement was actually accounting for and why, carries that grievance forward into everything that follows, into his relationship with his former spouse, into his relationship with his children, into his own financial identity and his sense of what the years of his marriage actually meant. The post-settlement clarity that the deal was real, that both sides of it were real, and that the settlement was an imperfect but structurally grounded attempt to account for both sides, is the understanding that allows a man to set the settlement down and move forward into his actual life, not the life organized around a grievance built on an incomplete picture. The actual life. The still point I want to leave you with today is this: the deal you made was real. Both sides of it were real. The price you paid for your side was real. And the price she paid for her side was real too, even though nobody ever gave it a number while she was paying it. The settlement was trying to account for both. Whether it did so fairly in your specific case is a question worth examining with precision and without flinching, but whether the principle behind it is legitimate is not a question. The deal had two sides, and the man who finally sees both of them clearly is the man who finally understands what his marriage actually was, what its ending actually cost, and what a genuinely informed response to that ending actually looks like. Drop a comment. Men, I want to know. Looking back at the deal that organized your marriage, which side of it do you think was least visible to you while it was running, and what is the specific thing you understand now about what your wife's contribution to the household actually contained that you did not fully see or value at the time? Subscribe to the Relationship Spectrum. Every week, I break down the economic, legal, and psychological realities of long marriage and divorce with enough honesty and enough precision that the man watching finally has a complete and accurate picture of what his marriage actually was, what it actually cost both people inside it, and what a genuinely informed response to its ending actually looks like.